The key thing for Donald Trump seems to be tariffs, which is a whole different conversation. But if, for instance, Donald Trump were to say, look, we will spare you from tariffs, but we expect you to work more closely with us on issues like security and not with the European Union so much, that poses a real problem for us. If Donald Trump says, we will spare you the tariffs, but you need to sort of not pursue this economic rapprochement with Brussels, that's problematic. So I don't think it's a question of losing a trade deal, because I don't think there's one on offer. I think it is more deliberate political linkage by the White House, because we know, there's one thing we know for certain, is that Donald Trump really doesn't like the European Union.
Indeed. Do you think we're in for another debate? Now, not one as intense or as watershed as the Brexit debate up to the referendum and the aftermath of 2016, but of who should we, through the rest of the decade and into the 2030s, where does our future lie? You know, I understand it's not entirely either or. I get that, but nevertheless, where should the bias be? Where should we put the most effort? The polls at the moment show 46% of us want the EU to be the top trade priority. 21% think it should be America. So a clear majority for the EU. But as this decade goes on and the European economies, if they continue to stagnate and the American economy continues to be dynamic, and Mr. Starmer wants to prioritize growth, well, people start to say, well, how does it help if we join the slow lane?
I mean, it might be we have that debate. Let me say a couple of things. Firstly, however slowly the EU grows, however quickly the US grows, the EU will be closer to us geographically, and that will always impact on trade volumes. The second thing about the debate is we're not going to have another massive debate about our relationship with the European Union anytime soon for two reasons. One, because neither of the main two political parties is interested in having that debate. And two, because if you ask the British people what their priorities are, only about 6% of them, 7% of them say relations with the European Union. So this is still an issue that gets people heated when they talk about it, but it's not necessarily one they see as a priority at the moment.
But you make an interesting point there in terms of trade and proximity. So you think that even if the European economies continue in their current sclerotic way, and America, which has been growing much more quickly in this decade than anywhere in Europe, continues to grow, that nevertheless our proximity to Europe still means that even though it's slow or stagnant, the trade opportunities would still be bigger than with a dynamic America?
I mean, I can't say with any certainty what happens 20, 30, 40 years in the future. It might be that technology helps us get around some of those geographical barriers, things like 3D printing, for instance, but that is very much for the future. At the moment, all the data and all the historical data suggests that the biggest single factor that determines volumes of trade flows is geographical proximity. Of course, the US is an enormous market for us. The US is our biggest single country trading partner, whilst the EU is our biggest trading partner, even though it's not a country. So trade with both are important, but I would say at the moment, the EU is our biggest trading partner. That's after Brexit. And so I'd be reluctant to predict the end of that anytime soon.